Good morning and welcome to our Scholar Success and Support Department's open house this morning. We are so thrilled to see you all with us live this morning. And if you're watching the recording, thank you so much for reviewing this recording. We have the wonderful Melissa Mayer on with us this morning to give us all of the updates and important information that you need to know for her department. So I will go ahead and pass the mic off to her and she will go over her presentation with some important updates and information.
All right, good Monday morning, everybody. I'm so happy that you are here to listen about the Scholar Success Team, and we will touch also on the Scholar Support Team at the end. As always, here is our agenda. We will start with the mission and vision, our values and scholar profile. I will introduce my team, give you an MTSS overview, discuss what those MTSS supports look like at Compass, and share some success rates and highlights. We will have a Q&A at the end, and that is when we will open the chat and answer all of your questions. So as always, here is our mission and vision. Both the mission and vision relate directly to MTSS. Our work with scholars is individualized based on specific skill needs, and we give our scholars those tools for their toolbox to help them learn, to love learning, and to become lifelong learners. Our Arctic values also speak directly to MTSS. These are present in all of our sessions. We always focus on achievement, respect, teamwork, integrity, and communication. I'm so happy that we have this wonderful Compass Scholar profile. Again, in our MTSS supports, we do address each of these whole learner outcomes. Okay, so I am Melissa Mayer. I am the Scholar Success Coordinator, and this is my second year in this role at Compass. Prior to that, I was still a member of the Scholar Success team as the reading tutor for middle and high school scholars. I've been in education for over 10 years, and it's always been my passion, especially working with scholars who just need a little additional support. I was a fine student, but I really found out that I had to work hard to comprehend some of the content. So it's always been my goal, my passion, to give scholars the support that they want and that they need in order to fully access their curriculum. Success for each scholar is the goal of our team. We work under an MTSS framework, which I'll dive into, that operates under the belief that all means all. All scholars receive equitable access to the curriculum. Okay, so meet our team. Every one of these educators loves her job, and it's so evident in her teaching. We have Miss Sylvia, who is our elementary reading intervention tutor. Miss Silva is middle school and high school reading intervention tutoring. Miss Jasmine does elementary math intervention tutoring, and we are currently in the process of hiring a tutor for middle school and high school math intervention. Last year, we added 3 resource specialists to our team in the spring. Wonderful addition. We have Mrs. Sullins in math, Mrs. Campisi in upper elementary, middle school, and high school ELA, and Mrs. Calderon is our reading specialist who works with lower elementary scholars. Okay, so what is MTSS? MTSS is a multi-tiered system of support. It is a systematic multi-tiered model which targets behavioral, social, emotional, and academic support for scholars prior to a problem. This tiered instruction is differentiated to meet the needs of the individual scholars, both academically and behaviorally. MTSS will make all scholars more successful in all areas of school and keep them on track for graduation while preparing them to be college and career ready. In each of these areas, behavioral, social, emotional, and academic, scholars receive tiered supports at various levels based on their needs. These levels are fluid. Some scholars may only need tier 1 supports. Some may need tier 2 for a bit to get through a rough patch, and a few may need intensive support at the tier 3 level to help get them back on track. What's beautiful about MTSS is your scholar has an entire team working to determine the specific supports that are best suited for him or her. So while MTSS encompasses all 3 of these domains, behavioral, social, emotional, and academic, today I'm just going to focus on the academic supports that we provide here at Compass. This graphic represents the different tiers within MTSS. At the bottom, we have tier 1, which is universal for all scholars. Then we have tier 2, which are more targeted supports for some. Then at the top is tier 3, which is intensive support for few. In MTSS, when we talk about academic supports, we talk about RTI, lots of acronyms, I know. RTI is response to instruction and intervention. It's an approach that focuses on individual scholars who are struggling academically, and all the stakeholders pool together resources to promote the scholar's success before they fall behind. It is both systematic and data-driven, with these tiered levels of intervention that benefit every scholar. This is what's so, again, beautiful about MTSS in all the domains. All stakeholders, teachers, counselors, coordinators, tutors, LCs, so on, collaborating to best support their scholar. So now I'm going to go in and give you a better look at each individual tier. Tier 1, as I mentioned, this is universal support for all. So all scholars receive tier 1 instruction and support in their classes. Approximately 80% of scholars qualify as needing only tier 1. This is rigorous grade level instruction with differentiation when needed. Tier 2 serves scholars needing more help. This is about 15% of a school population. This is extra instruction and support provided to these scholars, often in smaller groups. Tier 2 support is needed when small skill gaps are identified, either by a diagnostic assessment or by a teacher's progress monitoring. Sometimes this support happens with the content or supervising teacher. It's extra instruction and additional supports. If identified by the initial STAR diagnostic, scholars who need tier 2 supports will be invited to small group math and/or reading intervention tutoring. In these sessions, they'll receive targeted instruction via Freckle. Okay, and tier 3, this is for scholars who need intense support in order to succeed. It's about 5% of the scholar population. This is extra instruction and support provided often in even smaller groups or one-on-one so that scholars receive individualized attention that they need. Just like scholars in need of tier 2 support, scholars who need tier 3 will be invited to intervention tutoring. Okay, so I've talked about how scholars are identified. Let's look at that. As mentioned, we use a universal screener to initially identify scholars in need of tier 2 or tier 3 academic supports. This is done the first 2 weeks of school using the STAR Renaissance diagnostic. Scholars will take it 2 more times mid-year and at the end of the year to monitor progress and to show us growth. So say there's a scholar who is not identified as needing intervention via the STAR diagnostic. If a teacher notices that a scholar struggles with tier 1 instruction and identifies that there are skill gaps, the teacher will implement an evidence-based strategy and then monitor the scholar's progress. This data will then help determine if another intervention like tutoring or the resource groups will be helpful. So now let's look closer at what these supports from our team look like. Let's talk tutoring. As I mentioned, this was my role for 2 years at Compass, and it was the best job. We host weekly small group sessions. They're grouped by grade level for math and reading. These groups are based on the STAR diagnostic as well as teacher identification. This year, we're going to continue to use Freckle as our curriculum and focus on strengthening skills necessary for accessing grade level curriculum. So I like to say these sessions are what give those scholars tools that they need in their toolkit. Okay, and again, as I mentioned, in spring of 22, we onboarded 3 resource specialists. These are credentialed teachers who specialize in their field and very much have a passion for teaching scholars in need of additional support. Their sessions are going to focus on mastering grade level foundational skills, and they typically spend 3 to 4 weeks mastering a topic. Okay, so there was a lot of newness for our team and for our scholars last year, and we were really excited to dive into the data at the end of the school year to see how much our scholars in need of tiered support grew. Overall, we found that scholars who were identified as needing tiered intervention, those who attended our MTSS support sessions, they showed more growth than those who did not. And then looking at that data, those scholars who worked in Freckle showed more growth than those whose work was inconsistent. I expect these numbers to continue to increase because this is our second time around with both STAR and with Freckle. But bottom line, showing up to tutoring is great. Working in Freckle, also great. But for those scholars who did both of those things regularly, and they were participating in our sessions, they were engaged in our sessions regularly, their results were outstanding. Things are just going to continue to get better and better, but don't take my word for it. Go ahead and read over some of these quotes. We surveyed our LCs and scholars at the end of the school year to help us to refine our practices and increase our effectiveness of our supports. And I'm not going to lie, it's even happening right now. I get really choked up when I read the impact our team had on Compass scholars. And my all-time favorite, that one at the end, it helped me realize that I could do things I've never done before. We are doing our job when scholars realize how smart they really are. I want to share about another support that we offer here at Compass. It is called paper.co. This provides access to all of our YOLO Title I scholars and all high school scholars. It provides them with 24-hour tutoring support. This is different than our in-house intervention tutoring and resource groups. This is something that scholars who qualify have access to 24 hours a day. It is homework help, it's essay feedback, it's study support. So if your scholar does qualify, meaning they are a high school scholar or YOLO Title I, all he or she needs to do is add paper.co to the ClassLink dashboard, sign on, sign the code of conduct, and create a profile. We're really excited to offer the support of paper.co to some of our scholars this year. Okay, and finally, I would like to introduce you to my colleague, Dawn Lothringer, our Scholar Support Coordinator. She is truly amazing, a doer of all things. Dawn is the next step when a scholar does not respond to the MTSS framework. She schedules student support team meetings in which STs and other team members meet to discuss the supports of a scholar. She also oversees all the 504s, and she is making sure that the 504 is implemented, and she monitors the scholar's progress throughout the year. Her contact information will pop up at the very end, and you can direct questions to her about 504s. So here is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the MTSS supports we provide here at Compass. There is my number. My email is probably the best way to get a hold of me. And please do follow me on Twitter at CCS Mrs. Mayer. Mrs. Mayer. I almost said .com. So now I believe we will open up the chat for questions and stop the recording.